What is happening inside Tibet is complete erasure of a civilization, of a nation, of a people, its language, its culture, its religion, and everything.
Mhm.
So there now we are talking more about cultural genocide or some sort of genocide that's happening inside Tibet in 21st century. That is unacceptable because if China considers Tibet as part of China, then Tibetan culture is also a valuable part of that culture. And that needs to be preserved instead of destroying it.
Hello and welcome to Strat News Global. This is Nainima Basu and you are watching The Gist. I have with me today Mr. Penpa Sering. He has been elected as the president of the Central Tibetan Administration for the second time. We are going to understand from him the challenges that are going to emerge, that he is going to face as the 17th Kashag or the cabinet establishes, with the world changing, with so many conflicts going on. What is the future of the Tibetan struggle and the fact that China is also getting stronger? All that and much more we are going to understand from him on this interaction. Thank you for giving us your time, Sikyong, and
Thank
thank you
you.
very much. And
Thank you.
congratulations on your second win.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. So, just to understand from you, the basic question that comes in the mind now is that it has been almost 70 years, 75 years rather, since China has taken control over Tibet. You, in your swearing-in speech, talked about the resolution of the Sino-Tibetan conflict. I'll come to that, but then after 75 years and the fact that the world today is in a complete flux, right? There are so many conflicts going on, challenges are huge, the geopolitical headwinds, and amidst all this, China is getting stronger. So, where do you see the Tibetan struggle going, let's say, in the next 10, 20 years?
I think the current turmoil in the international political scenario makes the case Tibet makes the Tibet case stronger because Tibet perhaps today is maybe the only non-violent struggle that is going on, and the world needs better solutions. We cannot resolve all problems through violence. If
Mhm.
you look at the wars that are happening around us, whether they are resolving one problem now or creating more problems for future is something that we don't know.
Mhm.
So His Holiness, as a person, as a Buddhist, has been a visionary. He has been promoting peace all around the world, and he appreciates the concept of European Union. And if it is not for the concept of European Union, Europeans would still be fighting and killing each other. So if that can be applied to Europe, then why not Tibet with China?
Okay.
Which, whether we like it or not, we don't have a
Mhm.
Hanuman to lift Tibet out of that place and
Mhm.
put it somewhere in the Indian Ocean.
Mhm.
So whenever we get to return back to Tibet in whatever form, we will have to live with our neighbors, China, Indians, Chinese, Indians, and Bhutanese and Nepalese. So why not live in peace with each other as neighbors? So that
Mhm.
is His Holiness' whole idea, that the Sino-Tibet conflict should be resolved non-violently in a negotiated manner and mutually beneficial, because China is developing economically and Tibet can develop alongside China. And then Tibetan Buddhists can help some 250 to 300 million Chinese Buddhists who are deprived of or devoid of spiritualism over the last so many decades. So this is a mutually beneficial solution that His Holiness is looking for. So if these are done, then it would be lasting. You know, so if when conflicts are resolved in a calm mind, then it could have its consequences.
Mhm.
Uh, if it is done in a violent manner, there will always be some or other reason why it has to crop up again. So that is why the relevance of the
Right.
Tibetan struggle.
Mhm.
One is non-violence. And again, uh, conflicts that are going around in other parts of the world is one set of conflict, but what is happening inside Tibet is complete erasure of a civilization, of a nation, of a people, its language, its culture, its religion, and everything.
Mhm.
So there now we are talking more about cultural genocide or some sort of genocide that's happening inside Tibet in 21st century. That is unacceptable because if China considers Tibet as part of China, then Tibetan culture is also a valuable part of that culture. and that needs to be preserved instead of destroying it. So all these aspects, even in these very turbulent times, we have to navigate our way to stay afloat of uh, getting enough attention from the international community. And I think one of the main reason is also because of His Holiness aging age, that everybody is talking about reincarnation, what role China will play, and what we are preparing from here. So I think Tibet is very much in the international arena, and we have to work harder to get our messages across to counter China's disinformation on Tibet, including history of Tibet.
Sure. Also, when you talk about the movement going further, do you see the same kind of zeal within the new generation? Because I recently heard you talked about the fact that when His Holiness Dalai Lama came into India, that time the spirit was
Mm,
extremely high. People knew about the struggle. It
mm,
was a fresh struggle, and that continued. But now coming to the Gen Z, so to
mm.
say, of even within the Tibetan
Yes.
diaspora, which is expanding within India,
Mm.
do you see them also understanding the relevance, and why is it needed to take the struggle forward? Are they keen to go for the cause?
I see a lot of positive developments from the Central Tibetan Administration side. Also, we try to reach out to the youth as much as possible. Since we came into this office, even my predecessors had 550 conferences for the youth, especially for the youth. And earlier, even when I was working for Tibetan Parliamentary and Policy Research Center, we used to organize 2 youth conferences every year, one below class 12 and one for university
Mhm.
students. So we keep engaging with the youth, but whether it's enough or not is a different matter because we are spread across more than 28 different countries. So since we came into office, we started a platform called VTAC, this voluntary Tibet advocacy group, because
Mhm.
Tibetans has to be there in the forefront of Tibetan struggle, not other people. So Tibetans for Tibet, VTAC.
Mhm.
And this is a platform meant for every Tibetan, but more so for young Tibetans. And
Mhm.
more than 800 young Tibetans have joined this grouping. Uh, it doesn't matter whether you are proponent of independence or middle way, as long as you make clear what is the official position and what is your organizational or individual
Mhm.
goal for Tibet. So there is no, we want to bring all the Tibetans together. It's not just harnessing the youth, but
Mhm.
also make sure that we are all on the same page when it comes to. That's why whenever we strategize, whatever we strategize, however we advocate around the world, we tell our younger generation as to how we do it, and then specifically focusing on history because this is a forgotten subject.
Mhm.
And one of the
Mhm.
reasons why we focus on history is also to send a clear message to the Chinese government that they cannot distort or change Tibetan history. Whether it's in the past, whether it's in a human's life, well, yesterday is yesterday. You can't change that on the whims and fancies of some politicians. So we need to increase our voice around the world about the truth of Tibetan history, truth of what Chinese government is doing inside Tibet today, including the ethnic unity law that they passed this March. Chinese always have a very nice name for any law they pass, but it has exactly the opposite result. It's
Right.
aimed at
Mhm.
eradication of Tibetan identity, whether
Mhm.
it's language or culture or religion or
Mhm.
environment. So the youth getting to know more compared to how we were
Okay.
those days when I was
Mhm.
younger,
Mhm.
we had dearth of information. When I was a member of parliament, also, I didn't know exactly what was happening inside Tibet. So today, now you have more information, more access to knowledge. So only thing is you have to tap into it. So it has to come both from the Central Tibetan administration, also from the youth.
But how is it you get to know what is happening inside Tibet? Do you have people coming from there and telling you what is going on, or uh, how does this work? What is happening
Mm,
inside Tibet? Because I'm sure it's not,
mm,
you people are not allowed to go inside Tibet, of course. How is it the information exchange goes on?
mm. You rightly mentioned access to Tibet is very difficult, particularly for foreign diplomats, journalists, uh, uh, only on invitation. only on guided tours they would allow. Uh, we look at different reports. We look at inputs from different people. Have relatives here,
Mhm.
so they get to know about what's happening there, those kind of things. And then also there are radios who work on what's happening. Uh, Nowadays, Chinese government is allowing some Tibetans to come into Tibet, Tibetans in
Okay.
Europe or North America, but
Mhm.
they are also very restricted in their travels. But when they travel, also they make observations. There are different ways of. But one thing Chinese government always does is whenever anything happens inside Tibet, the first thing they make sure is it does not go out of Tibet.
Mhm.
So, including natural disasters, even if there's a forest fire or an earthquake, you are banned from sending information outside Tibet.
Mhm.
So that's how tightly controlled information is within Tibet. But wherever there's a wall, people learn to climb. So that's how exactly how we do it.
Right. You again, coming back to what you talked about the resolution of the Sino Tibet conflict through the middle way approach, and you spoke about the European Union model. But you've heard what the Chinese government is saying.
Mm.
Even last week, it said while the U.S. Secretary of State
Mm.
Marco Rubio was in India, we
Mm.
saw this sudden statement coming from the Chinese government talking about the legitimacy of the Central Tibetan administration.
Mm.
And of course, on the issue of the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama, which has been going on. But then they said that the CTA has no legitimacy, so to
Mm.
say. What do you have to say all that? Because this is a China which probably will not be, looking for any kind of resolution with you. So
Mm.
what do you do?
The Chinese government, they like to believe that they can control all the narrative, and then because of their economic power, they have military power and all other powers. So they think that they can influence world opinion in their favor. But we also have to understand that there are right-thinking people in this world, leaders, activists, people who support truth and justice. We cannot reach out to all the countries in the world, particularly autocrats, dictatorships, and countries who are very much economically dependent on China. We can reach out only to the free world. And we have the sympathy of the free world. Now, how do we turn that sympathy into concrete political support? So, our strategy, when we speak about the middle way and when China is not responding to that and also terming us as illegitimate, that's how China sees. That's also one of the reasons why we focus on history so much. That when China does not have the legitimacy of their rule in Tibet, they are trying to seek that legitimacy from the international community, asking every government to say that Tibet is part of People's Republic of China. So if they have the legitimacy, why do they have to ask every country? Why do they have to name Tibet as China's Tibet? Well, it's not part of China. So they have to now name as China's Tibet. Everybody in India knows that there was never ever a border with China till China occupied Tibet in 1950. So these facts need to be made known so that people understand. Just before we met a delegation from the British Parliament, the British also has a historical responsibility towards Tibet because Britishers were the only European nation that has historical connection with Tibet, and they have to stand up for the truth of history. These are the areas that we need to work. So we already got U.S. support on political, the Resolve Tibet Act. Now we have to work with other like-minded countries to see how we can push this forward. We can never give up as long as there is no freedom for Tibetans inside Tibet. We'll have to continue to carry on our movement.
Mhm.
There will be no stopping.
Mhm. Now, coming to the role that India has played, I know you have constantly spoken about India's support
Mm.
all these years to the Tibetan diaspora over here. But then dynamics within India is also changing, and of
Mm.
course, the Tibetan diaspora is expanding. The city is expanding. I'm sure the demands of the Tibetan diaspora is also kind of changing because that's how the world has undergone a complete
Mm.
paradigm shift. So, in that kind of a context, how do you see India's role? Do you think India needs to increase its support, or maybe take it up politically with the Chinese government? How do you see that? Because India follows a one China policy, as you're aware.
Mm.
But do you think somewhere India needs to play the Tibet card for its own benefit also.
Mm. Now, again, I keep saying this that uh, governments and politicians have to differentiate between the one China principle and one China policy. Because
Okay.
one China principle is between Taiwan and China, that there's only one China and that they themselves are the one says that they are the legitimate rulers of China, so others says this is one China principle. One China policy is the policy of governments towards China when they say Taiwan is integral part of China
Mhm.
or whatever. But that has nothing to do with Tibet. If it has to do with Tibet, then the 17-point agreement should come into being in 1950. So these I think differences also needs to be known. India has also not reiterated the statement since 2009. Um, so India is also learning how to face China, and China's response to all the developments in our democratic system and election and all that, I think it's a welcome sign that they are giving attention to what the Tibetans are doing in exile and
Mhm.
write about it. And
Mhm.
that's why sometimes we say that we thank the Chinese government for being our best publicity agent. So when they write, then people also study what Chinese government is saying and what the Tibetans are saying and make a differentiation about what the real truth is. So that way, I again through you, Strat News, thank the Chinese government for being our best publicity agent. They
Mhm.
should write more. They should speak more. Then it will become news.
Mhm. Also, Sekyong, if you can tell us about some of the challenges facing you now that
Mm,
you have come into your second tenure. Uh, Two things. First, of course, the reincarnation of Dalai Lama, the process.
mm,
China, as you're well aware, has started that entire process for now. For the last 4 or 5 years, they have
mm,
it has gained momentum. But within India, what is the conversation going on? Within the Tibetan
mm,
diaspora, has the process started by
mm,
you? I know what His Holiness has spoken about
mm.
the Garden Forden Trust, but then how do you see the process gaining momentum within India?
How much ever China prepares, as long as the 14th Dalai Lama is alive, there's nothing the Chinese government can do. Yeah,
Mhm.
so, uh, of course, from our side, we have been preparing within the Tibetan community, within the larger Tibetan Buddhist community, and then the larger Tibetan Buddhist world, and then the international community. And that's how we try to reach out, and we have been quite successful in getting views of the free world as to what they want regarding His Holiness. Of course, that also needs a lot of education because these concepts are more in Asia about reincarnation, particularly
Mhm.
India and Tibet, and reincarnation in this case is very unique to Tibetan Buddhism. So how much ever Chinese government says, I think it'll be very difficult for them to convince other governments because they don't believe in any religion. And religion and spirituality are matters of faith that comes from the heart, not by the orders of the government. So if you look at the Chinese pension, also he is not respected by the Tibetans inside Tibet. That's why they have to keep sending him back to gain some more kind of legitimacy among them. That's why it's a huge paradox inside Tibet, where the Chinese government does not allow a communist member, if it's a Tibetan, to even visit monasteries. They have to stay out of the monastery. And then suddenly they are asked to go and listen to the Chinese pension for the Kalachakra. So now what do they make of it? So there are a lot of paradoxes, a lot of contradictions in what China is doing. They want to use religion, but also want to curb religion. So how do they respond? How will they respond to all this? Of course, they have their position, three positions that they will look for the reincarnation within China. The golden urn needs to be used as per tradition, and the Chinese government would put the final seal. We have response to all these issues. Now it's up to the international community to see who's fair. Because China keeps saying we are using this. His Holiness Dalai Lama is using this as a political tool, whereas China is actually using this as a political tool. So whatever wrong they are doing, they like to put it on other people's head. So if China is really sincere about their international initiatives, talking about peace, dialogue, resolving through negotiations on all that in the international stage, then why can't they do that with the nationalities in China? Why can't they talk with the Tibetans? Why can't they talk with the East Turkestanis or the Mongols or the Hong Kongers or the Taiwanese and resolve the issue peacefully? So China always have dual standards, double standards. They always have a elephant's
Right.
tusk to show and a teeth to eat.
And my last question, again, part of the previous question, what are the immediate challenges facing you while you establish the 17th Kashag? Because again, even for the Central Tibetan administration, the political wing, so to say, I'm sure for you the challenges are also increasing. So if you can shed some light on that.
Now, on the political front, of course, as I mentioned, we cannot reach out to all the countries. So wherever we are able to reach out, there are still some governments which are hugely influenced by the Chinese government, and foreign ministries refuse to meet with us. So we will have to make extra efforts to convince these governments. We are not asking you to take a position. We are
Do you mean the
asking
Foreign
you.
Ministry of India?
No.
Others.
Any other governments,
Mostly.
foreign ministries that refuse to meet with us.
Why
At
is
least
that?
listen, because of Chinese pressure.
Chinese pressure.
Let's say Luxembourg in Europe.
Mhm.
5 Chinese big banks are there in Luxembourg. That's why the Foreign Office refused to meet with us. So again, if you play according to Chinese rules, then eventually you may have a Chinese governance system in your country. Would you prefer that? Because China is talking about.
But why do you think they should support you and not go for the Chinese when they have so many investments?
We live in this small world.
Mhm.
This is our home for all of humanity. A small country is a small country, and it's in the interest of the politicians who rule that country for 4 or 5 years to win again. Not many countries think long term. Countries should start thinking now. One of the benefits that people always talk about China is, oh, they can plan for 50 years, 100 years. Even democracies can plan long term.
Mhm. So these are some of your immediate
No,
challenges.
in reaching out to the international community, these are some of our challenges. Within the Tibetan community, we have a dispersal of the compact communities, so we have to bring vibrancy into these communities. That's not only connected with the livelihood or the preservation of our linguistic, cultural, and arts and crafts in exile, but also linked to the long-term sustainability of the Tibetan movement. So we have a lot of initiatives. Unlike other exile communities, we are the only one with a fully functional democratic polity, and we also, apart from the political solution that we have to find for the Sino-Tibet conflict, we also have a lot of welfare activities to take care of the Tibetans in exile in India and Nepal. And of course, to do all this, we have to have a very efficient administration here. So on all these 3 angles, we have a lot of initiatives moving into AI to, optimize our reach and effectiveness
Sure.
around
Well,
the world.
sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
That was Mr. Penpa Sering, President of the Central Tibetan Administration, talking to us, telling us how he plans to take the Tibetan struggle movement forward, and the fact that he's still hopeful of a resolution of a Sino-Tibetan conflict through the middle way approach of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Thank you for watching the conversation on The Gist. This is Nayanima Basu.